Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nanoni Donaldson, Vice President of Advancement at the University of Waterloo. I'm so pleased you could all join us for this celebration this afternoon. Before we begin, it is important to reflect on and acknowledge that the University of Waterloo's campuses in Waterloo, Kitchener, and Cambridge are situated on the Haldimand Tract, land that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River, granted to the Haudenosaunee of 6 nations. The land on which our Stratford campus was built is the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, as well as to all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people who call this land home. At Waterloo, our active work toward reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is coordinated within the Office of Indigenous Relations. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to everyone here today. Your presence underscores the significance of the occasion, and we are very honored that you could all participate. I would like to also welcome Regional Chair Karen Redmond. There we go. And Dorothy McCabe, Mayor of Waterloo. Welcome as well to members of our community who are here today, and University of Waterloo alumni, staff, faculty, and students, some of whom are recipients of scholarships, fellowships, internships, and research grants generously provided by CAIVAN. I'm glad you could be with us today, and I encourage you to take part in the conversation. Today we gather to celebrate a monumental announcement and a very special partnership. The launch of the Future Cities Institute, founded by CAIVAN, marks the beginning of a critically important collaboration that will quite literally shape the future of our urban spaces. A collaboration that holds the promise of making a transformative difference not just in Canada, but potentially far beyond. I would now like to call University of Waterloo President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Vivek Goel, to the stage. Under Vivek's leadership, Waterloo is working deliberately to align its research strengths with important global challenges. Guided by the Waterloo at 100 vision, the University of Waterloo will leverage its research strengths to address the human dimensions of global challenges, understanding and enhancing human experiences, and examining ways to translate knowledge for governance and policy.
Thank you, Nanoni. Transformative gifts, like you're about to hear from CAIVAN, empower our community to make a lasting impact on our world in collaboration with our partners. CAIVAN co-founders and CEOs, Frank Cairo and Troy von Hastrack, are innovative leaders in the Canadian real estate sector. They are also proud University of Waterloo alumni. We're grateful for their continued connection to Waterloo and their shared vision for making the world a better place for all. We are a community of problem solvers and leaders who seek to create equitable and sustainable solutions based on science, data, and facts for the future of humanity and our planet. Our alumni, like Frank and Troy, are change makers and leaders who are focused on uncovering these solutions alongside Waterloo's robust sustainability and innovation ecosystem. The Future Cities Institute, founded by CAIVAN, is an example of aligning our academic and research strengths across disciplines to make the most impact. FCI brings together exceptional strengths in areas including planning, science, engineering, health, work-integrated learning, partnership building, and academic programming to the field of city building. We're grateful for the support and vision of partners like CAIVAN. I'm excited to see so many of our researchers, students, and staff joining forces with industry and government experts to combine their considerable knowledge and apply it to solving the complex challenges that cities will face. Looking forward to seeing the impact of FCI on cities and communities across Canada and around the world in the years to come. It's now my pleasure to introduce Frank Cairo and Troy von Hastruck to the stage. Frank and Troy are co-founders and chief executive officers of CAIVAN Group. CAIVAN is currently a top 3 builder by volume in Ontario and active in more than 50 projects across the province. Frank and Troy are multidisciplinary entrepreneurs who've innovated across several sectors, harnessing advanced manufacturing, software engineering, data science, artificial intelligence, and generative design techniques in the optimization of built form and community design. And as I noted, they are both proud University of Waterloo alumni. Welcome, Frank and Troy.
We're thrilled to be here with you today as the Future Cities Institute turns into reality. We've been talking to Dr. Goel and the University of Waterloo about this idea for years. More specifically, we've been discussing the role academics can play in city building and how we can collaborate to create meaningful solutions to the big challenges and threats society is facing. Solutions that people will actually feel in their day-to-day lives. Frank and I have worked together for more than 20 years, applying qualitative and quantitative methods to problems and opportunities. When we started CAIVAN, we set the bar high and are not prepared to accept the orthodox and archaic paradigm of the real estate development business. CAIVAN is founding the Future Cities Institute to upend entrenched ways of thinking with a better tomorrow in mind. The status quo isn't working. To drive prosperity in Ontario and Canada, we need decisive leadership that's equipped with the right data and the right arsenal of tools. We need to approach city building with the scientific method and evidence-based solutions, which is exactly the kind of thinking that the talent at the University of Waterloo excels in. City building is full of silos. The Future Cities Institute will bring us together to better understand root cause and to drive solutions that will make a real difference. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Goel and Troy, for those introductory words. And it's nice to see Dr. Andre here, who our first conversation on Future Cities actually occurred in Dr. Andre's office at the time. And since retirement, Bruce Frayne has really kept the torch in full effect, and we're thankful for that. We're also thankful for everyone else that's here today. It's an exciting day for us, but also we believe it'll be transformative. If you'll allow me, I'd like to just start quickly by reading a passage written by someone I admired as a child. His name's Carl Sagan, back in 1995. And I hope it sets the stage for some of the discussion today. I have a foreboding of an America in my children and grandchildren's time, when America is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good, what is true, we slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media, the 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but an especially kind of celebration of ignorance. This was written 30 years ago. If you can visualize the time, it's Windows 95. And these words are, I think, very applicable for all of us today to keep in mind. As I stand before you today, I can say with almost certainty that we are living in both the most exciting and simultaneously the most unnerving chapter of human history. The extent of change we'll witness in our lifetime and really over the next 10 and 20 years will be unprecedented. Artificial general intelligence will actually be alive within the next 2 to 4 years. Within the next 10 to 20 years, most white-collar jobs as we know them will be replaced by synthetic, algorithm-driven beings that really will gain intelligence exponentially, while all of us left in our biological bodies will be really at a competitive disadvantage. Cities will be faced with rapid social, environmental, and economic implications. Political ideologies are likely to continue separating us. We're radicalizing at an alarming rate. Armed conflict in the world is growing. It's likely to escalate. Hate is on the rise, and indecision and lack of cohesion is really leaving us vulnerable. There's a positive side in a second, guys. Debate is no longer comfortable. It's actually borderline forbidden. Declining productivity here in Canada is making us poorer. And many of us have been left to feel hopeless amongst this climate crisis. And while it is true that history does repeat itself, and as we slip into this looming darkness, the backdrop of decline in the Western world is kind of reminiscent and reminds us of the fall of the Roman Empire. But this is all very overly simplistic and grossly undermines all of us. And we are more optimistic than ever. Hope in the prospect of extending the enlightened age into the future is really at the core of the Future Cities Institute. While it's easy to feel hopeless, the reality is there's more opportunity than risk in the world ahead. The greatest examples of human innovation and discovery have come when big threats emerge. And countless examples in this exist. Adversity really is the single greatest catalyst of progress and ingenuity for humanity. AGI, for instance, if harnessed, can really hold the prospect of transforming the human condition and really ridding us from biological suffering. Political polarization can be harnessed into passionate productivity, where we can create a canvas of different opinions and the best solutions can rise to the top. If we're really brave enough to debate and to be open about our feelings and the points of view we have. It's really bullshit that at the end of the day, the impact we've had on the planet is permanent and there's not anything we can do about it. It's a lie that future generations will definitely inherit a world that's worse off than we took when we arrived. The choices for the future we want are still in our hands, and it's definitely not too late. Let's get to work with deep curiosity, with setting goals and tracking progress. We need to protect human freedom while also inhibiting the externalities that we've had. We need to harness free markets and lead change and innovation at scale across Canada to be competitive in the global marketplace. And so what about cities? Cities are the arenas where the human strife, victory, love, and hate play out. Cities are the engines that power our nation. Doing well managing cities and their surroundings does have the capacity to dramatically improve the human condition and guarantee a positive change for us in the future. Today is not only a special day for Troy and I in the school, our entire team is rallying behind this as an important move into the future. And we came together to start a business back in 2010, Troy and I, and Gord, our partner, is here as well. We did that based on a deep curiosity, a tenacious passion, and above all else, a real full embrace of the scientific method. And we've learned that prosperity is probably the most powerful gateway to leveling the playing field, and it's really the drivers of prosperity that need to be more central in city building. And so we've built an organization through strong partnerships and an effective team. We're really the fastest growing real estate company in Ontario's history. But don't be fooled by appearances. Troy and I have been through more than a boatload of adversity in our lives, and these have all been blessings for us. My wife, Nisha, often says, it's important never let a good crisis go to waste. And, I think that's really where we're at today. We have a huge opportunity ahead. With each challenge we've faced, we've had an opportunity to learn, grow, be resilient, And those have been transformative gifts. You know, we've set ambitious goals, we frame hypotheses, we experiment and take risks, we collect data, we discover truth, and we refine our plans as we go. And this is what's really central to this prosperity in cities in the future. Cities have a tremendous moment of adversity on their hands. In many ways, we've lost a connection, you know, to what makes cities tick and how to monitor their health. You know, it's occurred to Troy and I that the world, as it's seemingly in a tailspin, is really missing a really obvious approach for better tomorrow. And much of the adversity and deep inequalities that today exist could have been and should have been prevented. And so better tools, better process, better technology is needed. The FCI gives us a wonderful opportunity for both a renaissance and a revival, an enlightenment of sorts that leading minds across various specialties, sectors, and walks of life will be free to challenge orthodox, re-embrace an unrestricted view of the world where the only currency that'll matter is truth. You know, magic happens with an understanding of root cause and the application of science. The FCI will bring tools and implementation techniques that have never been seen in the realm of city building. And I can guarantee that. And we hope that those tools make a difference in the world, which we will view through the lens of algorithm. By democratizing new and advanced toolkit, applied science and mathematics will build a stronger bridge for community leaders to make a difference, and we hope will drive prosperity into the future. As Dr. Goel embarks on a very bold vision for the University of Waterloo as it approaches its 100th birthday, a view of global futures with humanity at the center marks a golden age for the school and its contributions to the world. UW can and will make a difference by being bold, unorthodox, and by building new and innovative partnerships. The CAIVAN partnership with UW is really just the first of we want and hope will be many. And you know, we want to future-proof the world to restrict the darkness and to see the light. And we want to thank everyone for being here today and for the interest in the FCI. It's not only heartwarming and encouraging, but it's very exciting. And we hope all of you will seize the opportunity to engage with us as we, in the coming months, really work to rewrite the rulebook on cities and how communities are built in Ontario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank and Troy. And you know, the support from CAIVAN is more than just financial. It is really helping us in how we think, and as has been mentioned, really is based around the global futures concepts that we've been talking about for some time. And one of the things that has really come together as we work on this is colleagues right across all of our faculties. And we have many of our deans working with colleagues, multiple departments across the university that will compose the Future Cities Institute. And so it's my pleasure to call two of our deans to the podium, Mary Wells, Dean of the Faculty of Engineering, and Bruce Frayne, Dean of the Faculty of Environment, to present Frank and Troy with a special memento of our appreciation and commitment to our partnership. Here, we go through.
Alrighty.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're all going off now.
I always like it when the jackets are part of the gift. We'll expect to see those walking around Ottawa. I note that our Mayor of Kitchener has arrived, a little bit tardy, but I will introduce you nonetheless. Barry Verbanovich. Wave to the crowd. All right. So now, if you'll turn your attention to the screen, we have a short introduction to the Future Cities Institute founded by CAIVAN.
Cities drive the global economy and are home to vibrant and diverse communities. Yet they're also facing complex challenges that impact urban life. The Future Cities Institute, founded by CAIVAN, is leading a bold new mission to create healthier, more prosperous cities. By harnessing the University of Waterloo's strengths in interdisciplinary research, partnership building, and training, the Institute will deepen our understanding of urban complexities and forge pathways to transformative change. Together, we will imagine, design, and build a more resilient future for cities.
So just a teaser of the exciting times ahead for the Institute. But now I'd like to invite Vivek and Frank back up to the stage for a little bit of a fireside chat, a discussion about the challenges facing cities and what is needed to contribute to a sustainable and healthy future for us all.
So just imagine there's a fire burning away up there.
It's always called a fireside chat for some reason.
So once again, first of all, thanks to you and Troy for the great support and helping us really think about this. And as I mentioned, the Future Cities Institute is going to involve colleagues from all 6 of our faculties, and we'll partner with many different industry organizations, government levels of government, and take on the big issues that you talked about. So we're going to spend a few minutes just having a little conversation between Frank and myself, and then we'll have a few more of our colleagues join us, and we'll also have an opportunity for audience questions. Frank, I was really taken with the quote from Carl Sagan from 30 years ago, and when you listen to that, and we know there's been lots of people over the years talking about how society's going to shift. You almost have to wonder, why didn't we listen? Right? So what makes you feel positive about the future, that we will be able to listen to the concerns that are being raised about what's happening in society right today so that we have a better future?
It's a really great question, and I know that there's a lot of deep thought, more now than ever, actually going into, how did, in particular in Ontario, how did we end up with this housing crisis? How did we end up with this homelessness issue? How did we end up having 2 million people visit the food bank? And I think generally speaking, most things kind of incrementally happen. There's a good analogy about the frog being boiled in a pot of water. It's 1 degree at a time over a long period of time. That being said, the issues that we're facing need to be bad enough that shock to the system creates reform, the deep questions, curiosity about how we got here, and really does get, generally speaking, the public on board. And I think it's impossible to actually open a newspaper, for those that actually look at paper newspapers. There needs to be a better analogy, I guess pop the app and read a story that doesn't involve dialogue now on shortcomings that we're dealing with that has mobilized the public in a way we haven't seen before. So optimistically, I think issues have gotten bad enough that we care, and caring and being curious about the problem is really the start, it's the genesis moment of hopefully a better outcome into the future.
Yeah. So maybe we could spend a few minutes about what you see as those issues, particularly for cities, that are bad enough now that people are going to really care about. What are the most challenging issues?
So, I would answer the question through the lens of where my bias is, which is, community building and, in particular, housing. Access to housing is one of the most foundational, aspects of prosperity historically in North America. So, if you track, where equity and wealth has come from, it's really come from the formation of households and access to home ownership. And so, whether or not that's the model that is taken into the future is a debate point, but that huge wealth that's kind of been built with access to housing is no longer working. The wealth accumulation is being concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. And so what does that mean when it comes to democratizing prosperity? it means we either need to get housing back to an affordable place where we can have more people access it, or it means we need a new method of productively building wealth in Western society. And my personal point of view is that access to home is not only a right and freedom, but it really is what allows for a healthy society. When you're worried about where you're gonna live and how you're gonna put food on the table, it's hard to imagine other things like why these, environmental sustainability is important, why social justice needs fighting for, why a lot of the other sort of existential things need to be discussed. The capacity to deal with those only exists if the standard of living is such that we can dedicate effort to those things that aren't about day-to-day existence.
And what are the forces that are sort of creating that crisis, like, locally or globally, that you see as the ones that we can really tackle and change?
It's too bad we don't have more time, because it would be great to get a series of responses to that question, because it's a really interesting one. I think we've lost our way in the West. Getting anything done is near impossible. Rhetoric is inversely proportional to our ability to get things done. A lot of talk. We've had our head down for the last 15 years, really in an office working hard. And we're emerging to the world today, from this cave, because we're upset. We're really worried about where this is all going. If we don't get out of this paralysis mode and get into action, I think it's going to be a bad outcome for everybody. And so one driver of this predicament is inaction. Another driver is political polarization. And I don't just blame the media. I think all of us have a role to play in coming together and debating better. But also, we don't really have, as a society, we tear our leaders down. The first thing we do when someone is new in politics or new in a leadership role, what baggage can we uncover? What skeletons are in the closet? Did that guy say a racist comment 35 years ago? Or, does that woman really have the credentials? And how do we dig in and figure this out? That's wrong. What's more important is what they're doing now and the contributions that we're all making to make the world a better place. There shouldn't be complaining anymore without an end of that statement of complaint being an idea for a solution.
So it's interesting, the points you raised really relate to governance, how we govern ourselves, and going back again to the Carl Sagan quote, so much is driven by sound bites, and we used to talk about things being on an electoral cycle being too short. Now it's like, what's the social media cycle for this announcement going to be, and how many hours of good social media feed will we have if we make this announcement? And the kinds of challenges we're talking about are much more long-term. In your remarks, you talked a lot about different technologies, different tools that we can bring to bear on addressing some of the challenges around housing and development, but it's not enough, right? The technical solutions, if we don't have a mindset to getting things done, are not going to be enough to get there. How do you see solutions to that, or what do you see the Future Cities Institute doing to help us along that pathway?
So it's a great question.
These weren't rehearsed, though.
No, they're not rehearsed. Miriam, before today, warned me a dozen times to stay optimistic. I generally am. I do really worry, though, about this dogmatic kind of religious passion that's been growing, where a lot of people are using buzzwords that they don't even understand, and everyone's skating superficially by mentioning an anecdotal remark without really any understanding of the issues. Anything complicated needs a concerted effort to sort of dig down layer by layer to root cause. And there are no magic bullets in some of these issues. A 4-year political term, it's hard to really solve a problem. And there's many leaders in the community that are trying their best. And so the tools we want to develop will help those individuals with an open mind get to the core of what's going on and have kind of predictive tools, modeling capabilities to make better decisions. But at the end of the day, it is discouraging that there are areas right now that I couldn't talk to you about without being ridiculed publicly. And I worry that that's going to get worse and not better. Like there should be nothing at the university today that I could say that shouldn't be debated. But unfortunately, there are many things I can't say without being ostracized. Now, I'm not saying I have things to say that would ostracize me, but that's unfortunate. You know, I think any opinion, as ludicrous as it may sound, is worth listening to and bringing into the room with us to debate. And you know, sometimes the ones that are the most extreme need a hug and a conversation. And we hate them before we love them, and that's wrong. You know, we need to love before we hate, and it's a slower process to get there.
And that fits, again, for those that read newspapers. Yesterday in the Globe and Mail, there was the open letter signed by many community leaders about, you know, we've lost the ability to have civil discourse, right? And we can't address the big challenges we face if we can't have conversations. And if we can't talk about things that people feel that they don't want to hear, it just shuts down the ability to have debate. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important to you and Troy as developers to be involved in an initiative like this?
Do you feel that you're a developer?
Or what are you?
It's a really important question, and you know, when I actually hear that, I'm like, who? Oh, me. You know, Gord, Troy, and I, you know, our DNA is really, you know, in many ways we're just the voice of the single mom with 2 kids looking for a place to live. And we're a conduit for that dream. You know, why we're here, you know, in the real estate development sector, for sure, that's our business. Why we're here is that we see front row every day. You know, we work in 20 municipalities. Every day, how bad it's getting. The inability to do anything innovative is a real challenge. And you know, our team is here today. We have many members of our team here who are extraordinary individuals, a lot of Waterloo grads actually at our team. Not that all of you are, that's not a shot. U of T and stuff's great too. But you know, like they would love to describe kind of our approach to things. We're here because I think we can democratize some solutions that we've developed to solve business problems that are really applicable to solving city problems. Business problems and city problems are very complicated. And we really do want to be part of a better future. You know, we've made money. Whether we build something this way or that way, it doesn't matter to us. But if we have nothing to build because things have declined, and if the single mom with the 2 kids can't find anything when they come to see us, you know, that's a real devastating moment, and we have to avoid it. You know, we have to stay healthy as, you know, an economically, environmentally, and socially healthy place. And without change, I'm not sure that that's possible.
And I know part of your vision is it's not just about you as a company, but bringing other partners to bear, other businesses, other partner sectors. Can you talk a little bit about what you envision in those areas, which areas? And
yeah, it's wonderful. So, you know, I wouldn't say that business is the ultimate innovator, because that's not correct. I'd say that business is a front row seat and, you know, a window into on the ground what's happening, which is why it's important. And so you can think of partners like, you know, medical partners, transportation partners, infrastructure partners, land development, home building partners, and others that are on the ground, you know, putting things in the real world, you know, either in the ground or above the ground, to sort of talk through the impediments to innovation, and also to get some an understanding of kind of what are the big barriers. But innovation in the way that we envisage it is going to take more than just industry. One of the reasons why we're happy to be here today is that there's an engaged group across various faculties, as has been described. We had Stephen's here and others. We have a core team now from mechatronics, applied mathematics, engineering, and I can't see Scott's here as well, and others that is David here? I don't know, David, if you want to raise your hand. There he is. Yeah, so there's a really wonderful core team that's established, and we're already getting to work saying, here's a certain problem, and we're now talking in a scientific way about, well, what are the drivers of prosperity? How do we figure those out? How do we minimize and maximize functions and optimize with parameters? And it's wonderful because I think we're getting back to science, and because the group aren't in the space directly, there's an open-mindedness to sort of rebuilding what might be an archaic way of operating in Ontario.
Yeah. So that takes right into the question I was going to ask. I had an opportunity to visit your facility in Ottawa a few months ago, and to me, in my mind, home building was carpenters. And can you talk a little bit about the different techniques, tools? You mentioned some of them in your remarks that you're bringing to bear to transform a very traditional industry.
Yeah, and none of my comments are really slights against any others in the sector because it's a very difficult sector. The barriers to entry are massive. The capital requirements are massive. The approval framework's very difficult. So it's not a shot, but it is a really, the sector hasn't changed in 50 years. In fact, it's declined. Back in the 50s and 60s, there was more innovation in housing than probably there is today, which is shocking, and that's why I do talk about Renaissance a lot in the sector. But we didn't set out to be a software company or to be an advanced manufacturing facility, but we went there because the opportunity to do a better job for customers, use less resources, reduce our footprint, but deliver more requires those innovations. And there's been a lot of resistance. Not everyone's happy about that. But again, I think in the fullness of time, as we scale and as others hopefully are forced to, there will be innovation in the sector. It's hard to innovate, though, when, if you take one example of land development approvals, which are patchy at best. 1 month you might do well and have a subdivision approved, then you might be delayed 2 more years on the next one because of an issue you didn't see coming. And that lack of even flow on the land development side does preclude big scale solutions, because I can't just park houses in a parking lot waiting for a lot to be ready for them. I have to have even flow on the land development approvals in order to have even flow in the manufacturing side. So our team is constantly juggling new technology, new approaches, software solutions, and manufacturing solutions to do a better job in housing and to give the customer more for less. And there's not enough competition in our sector. And we hope that the land development business becomes more democratized, and then there are more players to drive competition. That's where we'll see a lot of, I think, innovation come.
That's great. And maybe to close off this part, I know you're a proud Waterloo alum, but you obviously had lots of potential partners to work with. What really motivated you to pick Waterloo as the place to work with on this?
So Troy and I are not academics. It's probably the opposite. In fact, I don't come from a family. We didn't have a very I actually grew up in a social housing project in Scarborough for my grade school years. We didn't really view academics as this place to shoot for. It was kind of a way to get a job. So that's interesting. Today we appreciate it more than we probably did. And we know that bridges that can be built with academics will yield better future. And that's really why we said, let's partner with a school. The depth and quality of talent at Waterloo is unprecedented, I believe, in the world. The STEM side of Waterloo is tremendous. The environment and other arts and other faculties are also very worth noting as leaders. And so there is no better place, I don't think, than here to, and you know, we consider the donation actually venture capital. And it's funny, because if we turn our mind to treating this donation as venture capital, I think it's the right way to look at it. And the benefit of that venture capital will be hopefully shared broadly, not just in one organization. But above all else, you know, Dr. Andre, Dean Wells, Dean Frayne, and you are the real reason. You know, it starts at the top. The leadership here is very much focused on a better future and not just saying it. And so we do believe that the leadership here will allow for transformative change. And we're not an easy partner to deal with. Like, we're really not. We're prickly sometimes, we debate some, but you guys are open to that. You know, I might say, I disagree, that's wrong. And you might say, you know, Frank, you're fucking wrong. Like, that's great. And there's very few places where we can do that now.
Yeah, because we can have civil discourse. And sometimes uncivil discourse as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And we can be prickly partners at times too. I know her name's been mentioned a few times, so maybe I'm just going to embarrass her. Jean, can you stand up? So, Jean Andre, Jean was Bruce's precursor as Dean of the Faculty of Environment, and I know the initial conversations really started on her watch, and we had the initial support from you for the Future Cities Initiative, which has now really grown into this. So I think this is a great time to invite Mary and Bruce back up. And we're going to continue the conversation. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. And I really enjoyed the conversation. And in particular, some of the things that resonate with me is the opportunity for civil discourse and to open people up to different ideas. And really, from my perspective, that's what a university is all about. It's about learning. It's about bringing students in and allowing them to be exposed to new ideas, and to have students here that have their minds and their hearts open to hearing different ideas they may not agree with, but having the capability of being able to listen, reflect, and perhaps it'll change their mind and perhaps it won't, but to create a place of learning like that. So that's just wonderful. And I love your, let's say, protopian view of the world instead of dystopian view of the world, so that's awesome. But I'd really like to thank Frank and Troy for this really important, and I would call remarkable, investment in this institution that will be, I believe, transformational. Transformational in the kinds of experiences it will provide to our students and to our academics as well. And you know, I really think one of the things that distinguishes the University of Waterloo from all other universities is our connection to community, but our connection to the real world. And so this just provides another touch point to allow our students that are studying, you know, in the academy a chance to experience and be exposed to real world problems, which are big and difficult problems to solve, and have really, really smart people tackle really big problems instead of, you know, tackling smaller problems. So I think just those kinds of experiences and exposure will be wonderful. But, and again, this Future Cities Institute, founded by CAIVAN, does represent this unique opportunity for collaboration and learning across the disciplines. And this is really something that is exciting for me as well. And I would love the engineer of the future that graduates from the University of Waterloo to be what I would call a transdisciplinary thinker. So they both have the technical expertise, but the breadth of ability to understand complex problems from a variety of perspectives. And that, to me, will be the engineering leader of the future. And these are the kinds of engineers we need to produce to solve some of the world's most complex challenges. The other thing I loved about what you talked about was this human-centric approach to building of cities, and you know, grounded in healthiness, grounded in prosperity, and grounded in happiness of people. And this is key to, you know, a very optimistic view of the future. And these are the kinds of When we think about our engineering solutions, to have them to be very, very human aligned is so critical. And again, this institute and the opportunities will provide the kind of exceptional space for knowledge sharing, ensuring the future urban planning leaders are equipped with the knowledge and skill sets to tackle our city's toughest and most difficult problems, and there are many, but we are up to the challenge, I think. I'd now like to hand it over to Bruce Frayne, Dean of the Faculty of Environment.
All right, thank you, Mary. Is this working? Yes, I think it is. Okay, great. So, kind of difficult to really add to what's been said by everybody so far, including Mary. But I think I'd just like to make a comment, one, to thank, of course, not just Frank, who I know we've got this the strong relationship with, but of course his partners, both Troy and Gord. And so I just really appreciate that. We've got to know each other a little bit over the years, a year and a half or so, when I took over from Jean. And by the way, everybody has stolen my thunder. I was going to give you a big shout out. But anyway, just to let you know, I also recognize the fact that this was your initiative right at the beginning. And it's now got to this point, which is amazing. So great to see you here, and I'm pleased you're here to be part of it. Yeah, I think we're beginning. I mean, I hope I'm not wrong, and I know in the spirit of openness you'll tell me if I am. But I think we're beginning to sort of understand who we are as people. And I think that is fundamental. So when you start off with this kind of dating relationship with someone like Frank, it's a kind of, he's checking you out, you're checking him out, that kind of thing, all watching your P's and Q's. But I think fairly quickly we realize that we are both people who want to see impact and see things actually happen and get done. I have to respect the way our institution works and the strengths that a university brings, but it also has weaknesses. And I think teaming up with CAIVAN helps to bring the strengths that we don't have. And so it's kind of a great partnership. And it's going to really help us to make that difference. And I also want to just recognize that all of this happens under Vivek's initiative, which is Waterloo at 100, which has really become a reason and a mandate for our faculties, environment, engineering, and the other four at this university, to actually think transformationally about change. And I think we're right at the point where we need to do that to survive as an institution and to thrive. And so again, Vivek, thank you for bringing that and kind of giving us permission to actually be innovative and to think about how we take what we do here and make an impact. I think, I've got some notes here that talk about where cities are going to be. Hi, Barry. where cities are going to be in the future. And I'm not going to go through it, but I just want to give you one statistic which is interesting and relevant. So yes, we've got problems here in Canada on the urban front, no doubt. And we're going to be addressing that through the FCI. But I'm hopeful as somebody with an international background who works in international development, and particularly cities of the global south, that what we achieve in the FCI will actually translate into tools and mindsets and so on that can be applied elsewhere in the world. By the end of this century, which is not that far away, it'll be in some of your lifetimes, we're going to have another 3.5 billion people on this planet who will all be housed in cities. And those are cities yet to be built, and most of those will be on the continent of Africa. So there are very significant global challenges at play that are not just Canadian-centric. What we do here, I really believe, will help us make not only the local impact that we need to, in partnership with CAIVAN, but it will allow us as an institution to have that global reach and make that global impact that we talk about under Waterloo at 100. So, enough from me. Let's get on now with the task at hand, which is for me to introduce Leah Minica, who is the inaugural director of the Future Cities Institute founded by CAIVAN. So, Leah, please come and join us. Thank you. And before I invite you to share some remarks with us, I just want to let you know that, that Leah's research focuses on designing cities to improve health, with a focus on urban systems and urban design for mental health. So Leah brings that health lens to the work that she does, but we'll also bring that, of course, to the CAIVAN, to the FCI. She is an associate professor in the School of Planning and was previously the director of Waterloo's Survey Research Center for 3 years. Leah also currently serves as treasurer of the Faculty Association of the University of Waterloo. We're kind of amongst friends here, so I can tell you that that is an incredibly important role that she plays, because the kinds of challenges that we are currently facing in the university are reflected through the kind of collaboration and innovative work that our faculty association does. And Leah is a person who works very hard at that. And that speaks to her interest in making an impact and actually playing an important role, which she's now bringing to the FCI. So I'll just share that with you because it speaks to her character as somebody who likes to do and likes to bring impact. In her role as the director of FCI, she brings her expertise and collaborative leadership style to build upon Waterloo's strengths in interdisciplinary research. Together with other researchers, she will lead initiatives that will help address the complexity of designing and building healthy and sustainable future cities. So with that introduction, I welcome you to give your remarks.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to all of you for coming and spending the afternoon with us. This is a phenomenal show of support by all of you. And so for colleagues at Waterloo, staff, faculty, students, alumni, as well as friends in government, industry, and our local communities, thank you so much for coming. And I'm thrilled to be able to share this journey with you. So it's been going on for a while. As you've heard, Jean is here as well. And it started before I was part of it. And I'm very, very excited to be part of it going forward. So in 2020, the Faculty of Environment launched the Future Cities Initiative, in part supported by a government grant, as well as a $1 million gift from our partners at CAIVAN. So the funding enabled our faculty to enlist great scholars, emerging and established scholars with doing work around futures thinking, strategic foresight, as well as urban context. So the faculty also at that time launched an undergraduate diploma in future cities, as well as a master's of future cities, which is a professional program aimed at equipping future city leaders with ways of anticipating and managing complex urban challenges. So in 2022, I accepted the role as director because I saw a really exciting opportunity to sort of accelerate and support and bring people together in the research that's already being done on our campus around cities, whether it's in engineering or in planning or in other faculties all over the place here at Waterloo. And I really feel the urgency, and we've heard about it already today, the urgency of addressing these very important interconnected challenges of affordable housing, climate change, resource scarcity, aging infrastructure, but also an aging population. So over the years of getting to know Frank, he shared some concerns about barriers and gaps in the systems that are supposed to support thoughtful and future-ready urban development. So we began to envision with a team of us, how could we learn and accomplish by bringing stakeholders from across disciplines, but also across sectors, and how could we bring everyone together into this discussion of building cities for the future? And we work to evolve the Future Cities Initiative into now the Future Cities Institute. So the reimagined FCI will prioritize training the next generation of leaders to address these complex urban issues, leveraging partnerships to build capacity and solve applied transdisciplinary research problems, and mobilizing knowledge across the 5 global futures that are outlined in Waterloo at 100. So our initial research programs are going to focus on housing and modeling integrated future cities. So this is what Frank had mentioned with working with our partners in engineering and math. And within the next 2 years, we're also going to be launching research programs in mobility future as well as sustainable infrastructure. And I think it's important to note, especially for our faculty colleagues in the room, that this is not going to be everything new. There's a lot of folks across campus and across, our other partner institutions who are already doing really fantastic research. It's going to be more about bringing people together and, like I said, accelerating the work that's already going on and bringing people into a network. And we've talked about, matchmaking partners with researchers and students and kind of leveraging all that excitement to make the transformative changes we've been talking about. So over the coming months, we're very excited to get to work building the FCI. So the people, the projects, and the training experiences that we're going to need to accomplish our goals. So my ask, I guess, for all of you, and I'm so thrilled to see such a great turnout, is that if you can imagine yourself in your position, in your industry, in your world, how you might contribute to or benefit from the work that we're going to be undertaking, I would love to hear from you. So please contact me, and thanks once again for joining us.
All right, so thank you very much, Leah. That's fantastic. All right, so this is perhaps one of the moments you've been waiting for, which is to have the opportunity to ask some questions of our guests here and the panel. So I think without any further ado, I'm going to open the floor for questions. We do have people with mics who are dotted around, so just raise your hand and they'll see you and bring you a microphone. So yeah, let's make a start. Who has a question? Right, there we go. Microphone's coming behind you.
Thank you very much. As we stand here today and turn the first page in what I'm sure will be a long and storied history for the Future Cities Institute, I would like to reflect and ask how you intend to create opportunities for and really empower the original people of this land. It's very important to me as a member of the Haudenosaunee Mohawk Nation Clan Wolf.
Great question. I'll open that to the floor. Is anybody who would like to respond to that?
Start off?
You can go ahead.
So absolutely, first of all, really important question and comment, and we very much see everything that we do at the University of Waterloo as we look forward to 2057, the Waterloo at 100, as starting with thinking about how do we relate with Indigenous communities, how do we work with the original stakeholders of the land, as well as how do we decolonize, how do we think about what the future, in this case, of cities is going to look like, where we have our First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples really driving the change. So as we develop these programs, certainly I know Leah will be working with colleagues across different communities. We'll be working with our Indigenous Relations Office to partner with communities. As we're thinking about our own campus master plan that we're developing for the university, which I'm hoping will become a test bed for some of the ideas. The groups that are being put together to do that are very much starting with our Indigenous partners, helping develop the concepts that we will work with. I don't know if Mary or Leah want to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think you answered it the way that I would. Thank you.
Maybe I'll just add, thank you so much for the question. I think when I think about, educating our engineers and stuff, taking some of the Indigenous ways of knowing around design, around the use of natural elements, these are all things I would love them to be exposed to. And I think the Future Cities Initiative is a great way to start to be able to do that and stuff. So really great question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that got us going. Okay, over here, please.
Well, congratulations to Frank and Troy for the just amazing gift. This is a transformative moment for anyone who's been thinking about cities to see fresh thinking. So my question for, I guess, whoever wants to tackle it is, what are the sacred cows when you're thinking about urban planning, transportation, land use, and the environment that you're most keen to tackle in the coming years with the Institute?
I think we'll let Frank start. I know he has only a few.
Thanks for being here, Ben. It's a really great question. What really irritates me, and we'll talk about why that's important in a second, is the buzzwords. And so where there's a buzzword, there's a sacred cow. So when people throw around the word sustainability, often they don't even know what they're talking about. They don't even know what they mean. But it's this catch-all term that it's kind of this cloak of immunity that gets thrown around. So that's one area, like what is sustainable, really? And how do we incorporate that in a meaningful way with other objectives? Sustainability used to really mean economic, social, and environmental balance. And the word now has been so contorted that it has so much baggage attached to it that I think we almost need to develop a new word for it. But that's one area. The massive industry that's behind things that are green has really, I think, taken the foot off the pedal on real solutions that in many ways are very simple to make a huge impact. So that's one of them. Another one would be, the term walkability. That doesn't mean just widen the sidewalk. Urban designers have lost their way, and I'm not going to, poke at any one individual here, but just because something's beautiful doesn't mean it's going to work. And what we see just about all the time now is, pretty pictures that are compelling at a public meeting, being that sacred cow. And they don't work if there's not reality and thorough science behind that vision. The same wonderful Main Street doesn't work in every part of Ontario. Sure, it's wonderful to walk to a baker or a butcher, and everyone wants that. But it's not always feasible, and there's large chunks of Ontario that have been built with this prospect of wonderful urban design that have vacant commercial, are unaffordable to live in. They're still bedroom neighborhoods, but they have traffic issues now because the roads were undersized. So, getting to science and really what makes things tick is at the core of the FCI. And of course, we want outcomes that are sustainable and walkable and healthy. But just because we paint a picture of it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
I guess just to add to that, I think for me, one of the sacred cows, and this is probably definitely in academia, but I'm sure also in industry and with governments, is that, and it can be about any topic, but just when people are so certain that they already know the answer, that is a sacred cow that I am very interested in tackling. And so as I've been, over the last few months, up to this launch, contacting colleagues from across all the faculties, I keep saying, it's about people with the skills who can help us answer the problems that we have and those sort of technical expertises, but also the mindset and the personality. And it's not maybe a personality, it's more of a curiosity, which is a word we've heard, but also an intellectual humility. That is to say, I am one person, and as one person, I cannot possibly know everything there is to know about this problem or about a solution. That's why we need interdisciplinary scholars around the table. That's why we need multi-sector partners around the table to say, yeah, that sounds great in your ivory tower, but when I go to get a land development approval, these are the barriers I face. That's why we need local governments, which is why I'm so thrilled that you're all here, to work with us to help us better understand how we can use our skills in the context in which they're most desperately needed to actually make a change. And so I think it's about, as we've been developing this idea for this institute, it's not about one person or just Waterloo or just CAIVAN. It's about putting those kind of egos aside and saying, how can we work on the problems and kind of keep ourselves a little bit out of it. It's the same when I have graduate students come to me and say, oh, do you want to be my supervisor? And then they already know the outcome of their thesis. And I'm like, well, I'm not your person then, because if you already know, you don't need to do a graduate degree to figure it out. So I think that kind of openness to working with new people and learning new things is, I think, a sacred cow that I'm very interested to tackle.
Mary, you have any sacred cows you want to talk
Well, I guess, for me, I think it's, again, engineers are trained to be problem solvers, and often we think of it from a very technical perspective, but I think we really need to put the humans at the center of everything we do. So we can come up with all sorts of technical solutions, but I'd like the engineers to not just think, can we do this, but also ask the question, should we do this, with that view of what will be the impact on human lives in everything they do. And so if we were able to do that, that would be a major win for me in terms of how engineers approach problem solving in the future.
All right, fantastic. Okay, so we have two here. So I think your hand was up first. So please take the microphone, and then you'll be second. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this and for including us. This is really fascinating, and I'm really can't wait to get better connected and learn more about this. But just picking up on your comments about sacred cows and doing things differently. Part of what I'm wondering about is who else is going to be involved in future cities, because people do need to be at the center of it, but people come in all types and sizes and makes and backgrounds and everything, right? So I think some of the challenge that I see with our communities right now is they were designed, and so many things were designed for a certain type of person, right? So how are we, or what are you thinking about in terms of bringing in all kinds of people with all kinds of backgrounds, like accessibility issues, people who want, like affordability issues, people with, low income, the whole gamut of society. I mean, that's who we're building our communities for. So just wondering if you could speak to some of that, any of you, and certainly what your vision is for that, Frank.
Yeah.
And I don't know who to bring.
So, I mean, that's a really excellent question. And I think one of the things that we've also been talking about as a team is like the brilliant strengths in engineering and math is one side of the puzzle, and the other side is like, so when Google was trying to go in and do the thing in Toronto and they got run out of town, right? Like, so there's technological solutions you can develop, but should you? I guess is the question.
Yeah.
And so including people all along that process, and citizens, not people. Everyone has to work at Waterloo, or everyone has to be a mayor, or everyone has to be an industry leader. Right? But so I mean,
you don't want more mayors.
So I think public participation is a key sort of foundational part of planning, which is where I work in the School of Planning here. And we have experts in public participation and community engagement. We are going to have an advisory board made up of different actors as well, from representation from here, from CAIVAN, from other industry sectors. And I think this is where, like you said, the connections are so important to say, okay, so do we want to work with Waterloo to do something, or we want to work with Kitchener to do something? Who should we talk to? So I think there's going to be a lot of give and take in this relationship. Mm-hmm.
The other thing I'll just add is, Mary talked about training and education for the next generation of leaders. It's also our opportunity to work with you and colleagues about what do you need. We've tossed around ideas, but we really want to work with the community. Mm-hmm. Should we have a summer school for new CAOs as they walk into their roles, or new city councilors? So, I think the opportunities are quite open, and we really want to have the discussion so that we can reach the right people who can then do the innovations that are necessary.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, because those are great answers, obviously, is that the foundation of an equitable realm where no one's left behind is really a strong and prosperous solution for the 80% of the cohort in the population. And with that prosperity building for the most possible people, there is capacity left for those that we don't want left behind. So there's kind of an 80-20 happening in that conversation, where extremely activist points of view need to be part of the discussion, even and I'm talking about in every way. The 0.05% of the population being heard is super important. The goal of, we'll call it general prosperity, is to leave capacity for those that we don't want left behind, first of all. Second of all, there's this interesting confluence between technological change and the shape of cities. And so this is a transportation comment, but it's also an accessibility comment, for instance. I often wonder, should we be building in a city that we want to last in built form for 100 or 200 years, sort of temporary predicaments that technology is going to solve in the next 10 years, for example. So an example of that would be, more advanced prosthesis, or interesting new approaches to mobility that may not require huge capital investments because they're on the cusp of delivering really wonderful democratized solutions at a lower cost to the overall population. So this is where the balance becomes very important to get to root cause again. Does everyone want, of everyone would say that all people in the population need to be taken into account. What's the best way to do that? That's a whole other conversation that needs a bit of a deeper assessment of what are the issues and how best do we deal with them with limited capital.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one more thing, that I think the whole idea of stakeholder cafes where you invite the public in, and it's so critical that we have the public engaged as kind of collaborators in this, because we need to earn the public's trust in what we're doing. And if they don't trust what we're doing around future cities, we're not going to go anywhere. So it's critical that they come along with us. And so that whole idea of stakeholder engagement, inclusive design, and even this idea of designing in the wild, where we send students out to live in cities, to observe, to see what it's like, to look at things from different perspectives, so they are living in those situations and get a different perspective, I think is another concept we could explore.
Great, thank you. Okay, so you're next. There, put your hand up so they can see you. Thank you. And then after that, it's here, and then you. Okay, so, and I'll just warn you that we might be out of time at that point. We'll address that when we get to it. Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to say that the FCI is very timely, relevant, and very smart, so congratulations. Some picking up on the comment I think you just made, I think the distinction between us being in the West and looking at some global benchmarks and references is really important. And you made a comment earlier, Frank, that we've lost our way, and there's a lot of me versus we inside of our culture. And I would just comment to the panelists, what do we think about that? Is it going to just evolve itself out with the next generation? Is there something that you have already discussed that we need to do? But without kind of turning the tide on that, it'll be very difficult, and some of the barriers will remain.
I'll start off because I think what you're raising there is really significant. And again, I think in the West, over the last 50 years, we've created a world where people can become more and more isolated. And this has led to, people are calling it the epidemic of loneliness, which has significant health outcomes, which is something that I've been doing research on. And technologies, including those sold by your former company, have helped encourage that isolation because people are just tied to their devices. And so I think as we look to the future and we think about the design of communities, like how do we get back to communities where people are having interactions with each other in person and not spending all their time online? And I think it's the same speaks for us as a university community in terms of how we engage with our students, with our employees, with our faculty, and we have a sense of community. Like, it's great to have so many people here. We don't have that many events anymore that we have 300 people in the room. Yeah. And some of that was a long-term trend, but then some of that really got accelerated in the pandemic.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just add, the wave of students I see coming in are desperate for community. And in fact, we just did a consultation survey, and when we talked about what kind of places do you want, they talked about this idea of third places, so somewhere where they can just get together and meet each other. And I think it's reminding them that they are part of a community and they have responsibilities as a community member, as part of that community, versus their rights. Like, often people come and say, these are my rights. Well, no, what are your responsibilities to this community? And it's, again, taking the opportunity to educate students, to expose them to these ideas and remind them of their responsibilities as community members.
So I'm going to say something controversial, and it's coming from a place of genuine concern and love, honestly. But for some reason, there's been this really hard shift to sort of identity through victimization, and I worry about this a lot. The me versus we, I think, is being perpetuated by this, who in this audience is the greatest victim, and I don't mean this audience, I mean in general. And it would be so much nicer if, we were weighed and felt accomplishment based on our contributions to the world more than our skin color or our sex or, preferences of any kind. And for some reason, our physical, superficial things are now paramount in many ways. And we talk less about contributions and we talk more about victimization. And I think that's really damaging for the youth. You know, for them to think that there's a path to be important because they've been wronged. That's not the way to kick off a generation of productivity or, you know, a me versus we headspace. If everyone was evaluated based on what they contributed, I think you'd see a real big shift back to we from me.
Okay, that's great. I am aware of time, but I'm going to just let things run on a little bit. So timekeepers, bear with us because we do have two more questions at least, and I think that the conversation is going well and we should just continue. So yeah, Prateep.
Thank you and congratulations. You know, great leadership, passion, and commitment from both sides here that we get to see. My question is something that, Frank, you already referred to in your talk by referring to social justice in the space of your work. In doing the Future Cities Institute and the initiative itself, you know, what sorts of normative directions it is going to take in your view? And of course, it's open to others on the podium there. And in specific, what kinds of values and principles that are going to not only guide the work on the Future Cities Initiative, but also the way we want to see the future cities themselves in the future? So that's my question. Thank you.
So you're delving into sensitivity. It's a really tough question to sort of take apart in a few minutes. But are there injustices and inequities in the world today? Absolutely. Is systemic and chronic kind of perpetuation of those happening? It is. Like I wish that activism in many of those aspects shifted from this realm of complaint into a realm of, you know, deep root cause assessment and solutions. And there's very little in that realm that is actually focused on the systemic solutions that are economic, social, and environmentally feasible. So ironically, I think the lens of that sustainability will help us with social justice. But there are big inequities in the world today. And they're probably going to magnify if the world is less affordable, if people have less access to a quality of life, if standard of living in Canada continues to decline, if we don't deal with productivity. Like, ironically speaking, you know, economic productivity is the single largest driver of, you know, social inequity. And so, you know, the base of the pyramid, if there is one, was probably, you know, generalized and proliferated prosperity as probably the best equalizer among humans and a target for us. But we hope to actually establish, you know, a better framework for what are the things we need to build in and what will this look like, because those are answers that don't have a thorough examination of root cause yet. And that's, you know, really what we want to get into.
That's great, thank you. Person's hand at the back, yes, thank you.
Hi, I've had to adjust my question a little bit because I think it was kind of answered, but I do still have one. So my question is, how do you see the development and design of physical communities tackling issues within online communities with regards to polarization and trust in leadership? Because I know that trust and polarization were both also mentioned, so I just want to see the connection there. If you have any.
Want to take a step?
So I think if I understand the question, you're talking about how we envision and think about physical spaces, online spaces to promote trust, minimize polarization and stuff. So I really believe in the importance of community and communities coming together to speak face to face, to express their ideas in a way that the person receiving the information can listen kind of in the gray, where they don't, with an open mind and an open heart, as I would call it, and can try and understand and see things from another person's perspective. Why may they feel that way? And then similarly, in a reciprocal manner, have the other person listen to a diverse view, and creating an environment where civil discourse can occur to lead to greater and enhanced understanding. And we can intentionally build spaces to bring communities together. And, you know, I'm in the engineering buildings. I leave, you know, when I leave, students are gathered together talking, they're smiling, they're laughing. Like, it's so important. I can't overemphasize the importance of creating spaces where communities can gather and have these conversations. And I'd love to see the university create spaces where the community and the public can come in and engage with the university on these important topics and things. So, and that's what I'd love to see with future cities, is create the creation of spaces like that.
And Mary, what I would add, building on what Leah said earlier, like, we have so many opportunities to bring people together. So you've helped create the Trust Network,
Right,
which
right,
is
yeah.
another group of scholars and I know there's overlaps in the groups as well, who are looking at many of these same issues. And so, like, if we identify this as a topic of concern, then the Future Cities Institute can work with the Trust Network in really starting to think about those sorts of challenges.
And maybe I'll just add one thing about the physical environment too, because I think we all think we're not vulnerable to marketing, right? But marketing works. But we all think we're like very in control of our own behaviors and our own actions and choices.
Who wants to buy a house?
But like the way, and there's been research done on this, the way neighborhoods are designed impacts the probability that you will have an unprompted interaction with your neighbor. So for example, they've looked at social cohesion in neighborhoods and frontage. And they found that about 10 feet between your front door and the sidewalk is ideal, because you're not so far back that it feels awkward to wave at your neighbor, and you're not so close up that it feels like a little bit like, yeah, get away from me. So there's those kinds of design elements that impact the way communities actually experience their neighbors, whether they know their neighbors, whether they trust their neighbors to watch their kid while they go, you know, to the grocery store. So when I moved into a little neighborhood in Midtown, right in Kitchener, I was like, why does everyone know each other in this neighborhood? It was totally wild to me that everyone seemed to know each other. So, I mean, for those of you who have dogs, like, that's a way people get to know each other. Little kids at the park, that's a way. But for people who didn't, I started thinking, so we live in an old house, like 100 years old, and no one on our street has a garage that you can walk right from the garage into the house. So even just the fact that everyone has to walk on the sidewalk to get from their, you know, car into their house increases that probability that you're going to see your neighbor and say hello, and that, you know. So I think there's ways that we can also think about, again, not like to socially engineer everything, but to think of, like, to be really thoughtful about how we're designing our communities and what impact that has on social connection. Because I think at the end of the day, as humans, we're social creatures, and that's what all of us crave. And I think that goes to your point too about like that question of like the social connection and being together in places is really important.
I think we're going to take one more question, and I think it's fitting that we allow the last question because it's from a central figure in our municipal governance. So Barry, please.
Oh, okay.
Microphone to the front here. Okay, there. It's coming. This is not a planted question, in case you're wondering.
It is not, but thank you very much. And first of all, Frank and Troy and the entire CAIVAN team, thank you very much for this. As someone who's involved obviously locally, but who's also had the opportunity to be involved in local governments nationally and internationally, I can't tell you how excited I am about this, because I've always felt, and Vivek and I have talked about this, that there is so much opportunity for Canadian thought leadership in this work, and to see it happening here and happening in our community is tremendous. So thank you for that. I guess my question to you in that regard is twofold. You know, if I had to ask you what your top 2 or 3 things, Frank, are that you'd like to see tackled early on in this process, what would they be? And the second part of it is, are there any places from your own work or research and sort of the team's research that you think are doing some good stuff already that we should perhaps be paying a little more attention to?
Thank you.
Yeah, both questions are great. So dealing with the first question, you know, there are examples of really good planning maneuvering that's happening in Ontario and various jurisdictions, so it's not all bad, actually. But what are the top 2 things that the FCI would create value in? I'll use a really specific example because there's a lot of high talk so far, but you know, getting really tangible about it. So in Ontario, there's generally an orthodox around, we're going to get a population target, which we're not even going to really challenge. We're just going to take it face value and really not investigate it, but we're going to get it. Then we're going to say that it's time to revisit our official plan, which is really the document that governs a municipality in its growth. And we're going to take that population and we're going to just, based on our predisposed, philosophical ideal, show it distributed in the existing urban area, or if required, let's show a little expansion in some location. Then after the OP is approved, we're going to come back and figure out how much it's going to cost. And then after we figured out how much it's going to cost, we're going to set a DC bylaw up where all the new people that are moving into these neighborhoods are going to pay the bill. And that's a really bad way to do business. And so, okay, well, thanks for the critique. As I said before, where's the solution? Okay. It would be great if we had dynamic modeling that could show the different scenarios of distributing that population in different built form, understand in real time with a dashboard what the implications are to regional GDP, the tax base, and all the requirements financially a municipality has to juggle. Simultaneously have predictive tools to say, based on these different scenarios, what are the likelihoods of this outcome or that outcome? And then also have built-in dynamic costing so that a municipality knows where it's going with eyes wide open in every dimension. And it's shocking to sort of be front row on some of these decisions that, 3, 4, 5, 6 years later, a municipality's caught on their heels with a real predicament. We have to raise tax, or we have to do something else like cut services, because we didn't know the impact of our decision at that time. So that's one example. The second example would be to build generative design tools and platforms for the ability of a municipality or a consultant to visualize different scenarios that are optimized based on algorithm. So I've got this downtown redevelopment idea. The downtown's dead because since COVID, I can't get employers back. Okay, let's model some scenarios. What if we built a more flexible zoning? What could happen? What if we did this? What could happen? And to actually see in real time the implications of certain scenarios. It's shocking that none of these tools exist in the world. It's really shocking. These are multi-billion-dollar decisions that get made really anecdotally. So those are the two things I would say just as examples, but there's hundreds of others. Those are two examples. In terms of our work, we work really hard at optimizing solutions to business problems. And the group here today could talk for hours about different things, but when you build the power of algorithm into your thought process, and when you really dig deep to figure out why things are occurring the way they are, it's very easy to be dynamic and quick about, probabilistically, this will guarantee or have the best probability of a good outcome. And the way we approach a lot of our business challenges that way, I think directly applies to some of the challenges that cities are facing. And so tools and sophistication and harnessing technology, the planning profession has been stale for 100 years. The talk has changed, but there hasn't been any real big innovation in tools. And so there's wonderful planners that are exceptional in Ontario. They just, human beings with a clipboard and a pencil can't do what's needed to solve these big problems. We have to infuse technological solutions.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Again, great question and great way to end, and I think that's a good call to challenge actually for what the FCI is really about and what its core business is going to be going forward. So thank you all for the wonderful questions, really appreciate it. A round of applause for all of you. So with that, I'm going to ask Vivek to please come up and give closing remarks.
I'm just going to be very brief here and again take the opportunity one last time to thank you, Frank, Troy, Gordon, CAIVAN for making this all possible and really stimulating the conversations in our community. And I know the faculty that have been involved have really gotten very excited about the opportunities ahead of us. And for the support that you've already provided and that you'll be providing for our students and for our community, and all the other great ideas that will come as we engage with the Advisory Council. We really look forward to that. I also want to thank my other panelists here, as well as everyone here in the audience. Those are a wonderful set of questions and comments that really got us going. There is still going to be the opportunity to ask some questions of our guests as we now convene in our reception, and there's some light refreshments in the back. And so I just close again by thanking everyone, and we look forward to working with all of you.